Viewers, welcome to everyone to the third session of Romantic Literature. In the last two sessions, we have discussed some features of Romantic literature. In this session, we have also decided in discussing some features or the rest of the features of Romantic literature, which is very relevant to understand the Romantic moment and Romantic literature. First of all, the Romantic revival in English literature began with the publication of Lyrical Ballad, which we have already mentioned that. And Lyrical Ballad was a joint work of Wordsworth and Coleridge. It was published in 1798. It doesn't mean that it started actually in 1798. Actually, it started after the liberation of the USA in 1776. As before the publication of Lyrical Ballad, there is no structure, there is no written form, there is no certain features of Romantic literature. The critics have not considered the previous is. The previous is called the pre-Romantic, the preparation years of Romantic moment. The second, with the passage of time. Throughout history, there have been notable changes in the form of style of poetry, obviously, if we consider, and we'll discuss it in a session. Before the Romantic literature, the style of writing, especially in poetry, we have seen that a different types of structure has been used, form is used, or style is used, but it has been changed in Romantic literature. Traditions become established ideas and continue to shape people, habit, and outlooks. So we have already mentioned Romanticism tries to break up the traditions. Traditions of what? Of a culture, of a country, a society, family, even a person, he himself can change his habit, inner side and outside. Next, we say, new ideas and new ways of looking at things make a turning point in the history of culture. After that, we can say, sometimes a new moment in art and literature aims at deliberate break with the past. The Romantic movement is such a significant chapter in the history of English poetry. The Romantic revival was such a break with the established tradition. I'm not going to discuss it here again as we have discussed. Next one, the Romantic poets challenged the conventional 18th century poetry. The students, the 18th century poetry or the 18th century literature is called the New Classical Literature. They challenged it. They have established, the Romantic poets have established new types of poetry in the Romantic literature. Another point or the features is the Romantic age was an age of upheaval and revolution in politics. Why? It's a revolution. Revolution happened in politics, or the upheaval happened in politics because of two important historical events happened before the Romantic movement. One happened in 1776 after the independence of the USA. Another happened in 1789 whenever French Revolution occurred. After these two historical events, the worldwide politics, especially in Europe, has been changed a lot. And we know that no author, no poet can go beyond its contemporary age. Another point is that the American proclaimed that all are created equal and that everyone has a right to enjoy literary and the pursuit of happiness. What does it mean that? The, it means that from the ancient, the medieval age up to the romantic age, actually, we know that class discrimination is vigorously seen here and there. Master and peasant groups, but romantic literature established the equal rights of all of human beings. They think that color, religion, and economic condition cannot be tools to be separated the human being. So as all the human being is created by God, so everyone must enjoy the similar rights. As we see that the point also indicates that Romanticism believes in religion. I mean the activities of religion, and it carries the order of God. In 1789, French Revolution overthrew monarchy and aristocracy in France, the fall of Bastille. The slogan of equality, liberty, and fidelity echoed throughout Europe because of French Revolution. So you have seen that equality, liberty, and fidelity. Equality among the people, equality among the upper class and lower class, liberty among the nations, liberty among the community, liberty inside a human being. The Romantic poets looked forward to a more just and happier future of humanity. Obviously, I have already mentioned very first session that without having the humanity, kindness, you cannot say that you are the romantic one. You should have the sympathy for the other people. And romantic poets believe it, and critics also identified the features in romantic literature. The turmoil in France ended by the kind of tyranny under the dictatorship of Napoleon Bonaparte, who was a general of France's revolutionary forces. He made himself an emperor of France in 1804. Next, we can say the Romantic movement began under such political circumstances as a rebellion against conventional style. Readers looked for literature that offered pleasurable sensation and appealed to emotion. Dear viewers, how you will connect that? Why you think that? Or why have the critics claimed Romantic movement is a reflection of the political circumstances? Obviously, we must admire it, we must admit it. As we have already mentioned, in 1776, USA got its independence, and in 1789, the French Revolution occurred. So these are the political reasons. That's why we must say Romantic movement is also the result of or the feedback of the political circumstances in Europe. Next, we can say people became interested in the beauty of national setting, from the social hunt. So love the beauty of nature, to love the human being, to love the creation of God is another features of Romantic literature or the Romantic movement. The Romantic believed in the power of imagination to make us ambitious or consider an ideal world. A central theme of Romantic poet was the discovery of the self, one's own sincere feeling and imagination, as we have discussed it in the second session. So you can understand the meaning of this feature. Next one, The Romantic poets believed in a spontaneous and intuitive kind of literature. As we know that the definition of poem given by Wordsworth, where he says that spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, here we have seen that spontaneity. What's the reason? As we have know the imaginative power, as we have know the freedom of choice, as we have know the freedom of rights, as we have no freedom of thinking, that's why we confine ourselves, we became the introverted. But Romantic literature encourages us to be extroverted and to be spontaneous each and everywhere. It is another important aspect. It means of what? Whenever you become the spontaneous, you can realize, you can feel your own identity, your own values to the society. They asked people to find in the nature the answer to the artificial restraint of civilization. The Romantic poets are basically poets of nature. A return to nature and natural behavior and action of man become prominent in Romantic literature. The idea of Romantic literature was in contrast to the literary and cultural traditions of classical poetry in England. It breaks up the traditional style of the poetry. Romantic revival is also a revival of Hellenic culture and aesthetic values. Obviously, it enhanced the aesthetic values. We have seen few things in cases to autumn. Next, we can say that the distinguished characteristic of Romantic poetry, in a nutshell, we can say imagination, love for external nature, and appreciation of beauty, use of simple language, use of blank verse, escapism, then supernatural elements, medievalism, subjectivity. We can say, first of all, imagination, we have discussed several times. Love for the external nature, obviously. People always busy to see his or her own beauty. But Romantic poet says no. We must consider also the external beauty, the nature. Then of what? We must appreciate the beauty of the nature, beauty of the creation of the God. One example you can set here, whenever the ancient mariner is cursed by God, he has been suffering days after day. One day, in the rotten water, whenever he has seen some snakes are moving under or near his, surrounded his ship, he says that how beautiful these are, and he falls in love. Suddenly he says that God started blessing him. What does it mean that? It means of what? The Romantic poets instructs us or suggests that we must appreciate the beauty of God, the beauty of the nature, beauty of the human being, beauty of all kinds of creation. No humankind is ugly at all. So we must open our inner eyes. Use of simple language. The rhyme of the ancient mariner consists of 625 lines, but you will get only few words are unknown to us. Very simple language, very short words, or monosyllabic words or dissyllable words are used in the poem. Blank verse. And escapism. Whenever we read Keats's poem, we will see that he is called an escapist or an escapism in his writing. Even we will see it also in Percy Bysshe Shelley's poem. So escapism is also another important terms of Romantic literature. Supernatural elements, obviously. No Romantic literature, no Romantic poems you can find that where there is no elements of supernatural supernatural elements. Supernatural elements is one of the most important elements of romantic age. Medievalism. Subjectivity obviously out. Whenever we will discuss out, we will see that all the literatures, these are what? These are subjective. Next we can say a strong tendency to melancholy which is often carried to the point of morbidness, especially when we'll read the Rime of the Ancient Mariner to a skylark or an Grecian arc or to a melancholy. Kubla Khan will see that theme of melancholy is set up there. I mean, melancholy, tendency of melancholy is another important aspect of romanticism. A democratic spirit, a breaking away from the interest in social life and a conviction that every human being is worthy of respect. So whenever you want to break up the tradition, you should not be the extremist, you should not violate the rules, but through the democracy, you can easily change your terms and condition or the tradition. That is inspired in romantic literature. So we'll see that in the next session we'll see who are the actually romantics. So this is enough. The third session of romantic literature. Wait for the next one. Thank you everyone again.